Hey, I'm Matt. Today I'm going to show you 5 finger-saving tips and tricks for your shop. I did a little research, and in 2021 alone, there were more than 1.8 million people in the U.S. who had to go seek emergency medical attention for upper extremity injuries, arms, fingers, hands, things like that, just in home workshops. 1.8 million. That is a lot of people. And we want to try to prevent that with some of these. Number 1 on the list is cutting small parts at the miter saw. If you've ever tried to cut a small piece, like just needed to cut a little piece off of this at the miter saw, and it feels uneasy because that's your sixth sense saying, hey dummy, don't do this. When you have a small piece though, there's nothing supporting it back here, so it's pulling this direction. That's what happened to me on a small cross build that I was making. I was trying to cut a tiny piece and it pulled just enough that it kicked back up into the blade. I didn't get it into the blade, but I did break that finger. It hurt for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, if I need to cut this and I just want to shave a little bit off, they make this product. This is called the $1 Million Stick, and it's from FastCap. The way it works is there's 2 rubber pieces here that help grip, and then the back also has those rubber pieces on it too. Nice rubber grip handle. For one, your hand is way away from the blade. It's going to allow you to put pressure down back here so that you're holding pressure on the piece you're cutting, and you have pressure back here. So you got 3 points of pressure that you're able to hold this securely. Now, because of my past experience, there's no way I'm trying to cut that without some type of hold there. So we'll cut it with this and we'll see how well it works. This is about as small as you're going to get. I got about maybe 1.5 inches of surface that's contacting the fence. So we're going to be cutting a very tiny part here. Now there's a limit to how short of a piece you would want to cut on a miter saw, and it's going to depend on how far or how close to the cut area that your fence goes. On mine though, the fence is quite a bit of ways away from where the cut area is. So when you start cutting shorter pieces that don't have enough surface area to be supported by the back fence, you're going to run into some major problems, just as you see here. I cut this down as short as I could in small bites until I finally got it to actually catch. I did that because my hand was far enough away from the blade and the piece would be flying back that way. So I wasn't really concerned with it actually injuring me using something like this. But as you saw on the previous cuts, you can cut shorter stock with this. Now, a quick and easy way to add enough support so that you can cut those smaller pieces just to add a temporary fence on there. This is just MDF. You can use plywood or anything else. Just take some double stick tape. Now, your fence likely also has holes in it so that you can attach these permanently if you wanted to. And that's the piece from earlier. Now I have a sacrificial fence that's going to give me support all the way up to the cut. That way there's nothing getting pushed back or tilting or moving at the point of the cut, which is what's going to cause the kickback or the fault in the cut. You can cut some pretty short pieces at this point. Just be really careful and don't cut your support stick. Now, no way in any normal circumstance other than this method would you want to cut pieces this short. I would highly recommend picking up one of these. They're very inexpensive and they could save your fingers. Also, with the sacrificial fence, you're basically eliminating any kind of tear out that you may have had, so it kind of plays a double role. Number 2 on the list is cutting panels on the saw. A lot of times are wider panels like sheet goods, things like that. Now, there's a way to push these through the blade that's not going to cause it to kick back or get bound up, things like that. A lot of people think that you should be pushing over here next to the fence. You're way away from the blade, right? So that seems safest. When you do that and you're pushing on this corner, as you can see, it makes sense once you look at it that it's going to push away from the fence. It's turning into the blade. It's going to climb up on that blade, and that blade is going to kick it back every time, especially if you don't have a splitter, riving knife, something like that. I cut a lot of panels like this and have never had any issues. I do keep pressure going down on the fence, but I also push from this area this way. I kind of push force toward the fence and down at the same time, but you keep your hands way away from that blade. So you can easily make this cut safely if you just don't push on this corner. You're pushing more over here. Again, just watch where the blade's at, keep your hand way away from it. The use of a push block here would absolutely be a good idea. Just in case something does happen, your hand is on the push block. If it gets pulled into the blade, then it protects those fingers and things like that. I like these gripper ones. I like this one, the micro jig gripper. I also like the gripper block. They have those nice grippy pads on the bottom. You can push on through the cut without any issue. Now 2B is when you're making a cut on the table saw, the reason you see so many people that have an outfeed table on the back side of the saw is to prevent you from having that urge to reach across the blade to grab this offcut. When I had my old Delta, for instance, I didn't have an outfeed table for a long time and pieces would fall. And I did have that tendency to try to reach over and grab that drop piece. That is very dangerous. So get you an outfeed table or some type of work support back there. It doesn't even have to be a table. You can make a makeshift outfeed so that your pieces don't fall and you don't have that urge to reach and grab those drop pieces. And then you may notice that I have a blade guard on here now. This came with the saw. I've never installed it. However, being safety minded and trying to think as a wiser person, I was watching one of Stumpy Nub's videos and he talked about the blade guard being on there. And one of the reasons was if you trip and fall or stumble into the blade when it's spinning, that would prevent your hands from catching into it. So I'm going to do my very best to leave this on there as much as possible. Number 3 on the list is the router table. Now, a lot of people don't give this tool enough respect, myself included. I had a kickback incident, about 6 of them in a row, a big dummy. So you can go watch that video. I'll link it in the description below. There'll be a card pop up here too. I was just using it improperly. I learned a valuable lesson that day. A few weeks ago, I made table saw jigs using the router table, and I showed you how to cut these grooves in this small stock. It's just a very dangerous cut that you would not want to make on the router table by hand. So all I did was set up my stop blocks. I positioned my bit to be in the center of the cut, and then I also made shallow passes. But I took some double-sided tape and put a handle on this piece. That way I could route this safely without my fingers ever having come close to the bit. And that's a common theme. The further you can keep your hands away from the bits and blades, the better off you're going to be. It's pretty common sense, but we get in a hurry and we don't think about it and we do it anyway. I'm guilty of it too. Also made basically a crosscut sled or a sacrificial crosscut sled with this here. All you're going to do is cut about a 10-inch square piece of plywood. The size really doesn't matter. It could be 12, it could be 8. Drill a couple of small holes in there for clamping. You're gonna just glue a handle on there. It's a scrap piece. Set your fence up to be square, and then this is gonna allow you to cut grooves across narrow pieces. This works so perfect. I've literally never felt safer using a router table with this jig in hand. I even said it in that video. I don't think I've ever felt safer using the router table for something like that. That is a really good idea. Thank you, Mike. Super simple to do, and it makes it much, much safer. There's no way you'd want to try to hold that piece and go across that bit like that without something supporting it. Number 4 on the list is cutting sheet goods with a circular saw, or not really sheet goods, any long cuts that you're going to be making. This can be dangerous if you don't do it correctly. A lot of people will make this cut and then to catch this supportive piece with their hand, their offhand that's not on the tool. What happens is you put your hand in the line of that blade a lot of times. And you know, on long cuts, if this isn't supported, what's going to happen usually is it's going to start binding up close to the end of the cut. When that happens, you're begging for a kickback on a circular saw. If that kicks back while your hands are underneath there, that blade is right in line with those fingers. Like, this is one of the most dangerous things you can do with a circular saw like this. Make sure that the blade depth is set correctly. Don't have it all the way down, just barely enough to make the cut is all you need. That way, if it does happen to kick back and your hand does happen to be in the way, hopefully it does minimal damage. If it's all the way down like this one is and it kicks back, what's gonna happen? Probably gonna have a bad day in the shop. Typically, I put it up on this table and use some bench cookies just to hold it off there and have it supported on all sides. Or if it's too big, I will set up some sawhorses out here that's going to catch this piece and not let it fall more than just a 1/4 inch or so. That way everything's supported. Another thing to consider is hold downs or clamping when you're using these sheet goods. Make sure you have something holding your sheet good in place. That way it's not twisting and moving on you when you try to cut it. Number 5 on the list is the brad nailer. I use this a ton in the shop, especially just to tack things on while the glue dries. It's one of the handiest tools you can get in the shop. Now, there's a right and a wrong way to drive the nails. You do it the wrong way, it's gonna pop out the side. You do it the right way, and it won't, but you still don't wanna put your finger there. So a lot of times when you get in a hurry, you'll be trying to hold a piece and then drive that nail like that. You'll wind up putting a finger there. Obviously this won't cut the finger off, but it's not gonna be a fun day in the shop. So I'm driving a nail into this piece, down into that piece. I want to make sure that the nail gun is perpendicular to the stock I'm driving into. In other words, we're making a T here, right? Drive that in there. Should drive all the way through without it popping out. Now, if you turn it the same direction as the board, a lot of times when you drive, it'll come out the side one way or the other, especially if you have any little tilt to it at all. It won't happen every time, but a lot of times it will pop out the side. And if your finger happened to be there, that is a long way for that nail to go into that thumb. Woo! Now the reason it does that is if you hold it this way and the nail bends, it's going to bend left and right because these are basically flat. So they're going to go left or right, and different hardwoods will make it react different ways too. If it hits a knot hole in pine, it'll kick every time. But if you drive them this way, if they do bend, they're going to bend with the wood you're driving into. If you drive them this way though, they can bend left or right and come out the side. One, it's going to mess your project up, and it's going to have you a bad day if it gets in your finger. I hope this video gave you some tips and tricks to work more safely in your shop. If you like this video, click that box right there, take you to another video that you're going to love. Click in the box to get you the big old virtual fist bump. Thank you so much for watching. Also, you can watch that one.